So I did a women in history theme for the books that I read this month. So that's what you're getting treated to. I did America's First Daughter, and it has two authors, Stephanie Dray and Laura Kamoie. I'm not really sure how you say that, Kamoie, but it is an uncomfortable but fascinating read. It takes you from Monticello to Revolutionary Paris to the Jefferson White House. And while it is a fictional account, it is meticulously researched. It's full of historical details. I would say, in light of current events, it provides a painful look at some of our founding fathers' dark family secrets and personal failings that impacted where our country is today. It might change your view of Jefferson and the legacy that he left, even if you're aware of his relationship with Sally Hemings. This book really highlights his personal failings, not just to her, but also to the children of that union. It's painful to see the difference in how he treats the children from his marriage and the children that he had with Sally. It's written from the viewpoint of Jefferson's daughter, his oldest and in the end, his only surviving daughter, Martha Patsy Jefferson Randolph, which kind of gives it a unique view as far as the historical events, because obviously women at that time they had very little power in any real sense of the word. So I think it was fascinating to me because it was her view of him and her view of how he treated Sally and her children and other people as well. It's almost 600 pages, so it's not a quick read, but I will tell you that I found myself not wanting to put it down. It deals with issues from domestic violence to slavery being accepted social practices. That's the painful part for reading. To the wealthy acting with impunity until the poor revolted, to death from childbed fever and illnesses that are curable today. And back then it was just it's just character after character that you're just like, oh my. It also had an interesting narrative on marriages during that time, and I have to read you this passage just because. Let's see. After 34 years of marriage, I now saw union between man and woman was the same as union among the states, as a series of debates and compromises that might hold it all together for a few more years or end in a painful separation. She had some very interesting, there were just several things like that that made me keep reading and want to see what other comparisons she might draw. It is available as an ebook on Libby. And I do want to say also that one of the things that amazed me the most about this was that even with very little real power, women had a tremendous influence on how history turned out, because they kind of combined their leverage on the men in their lives. And I'll give you as an example, Martha completely changed the narrative in the news of that day by befriending the wives of the most influential newspapermen. And reading how she did that was, it's amazing to me to see that even if you're not granted that power, you can still take that power. And she did. She is a woman to admire, even with all her personal failings. But one of the other times in the book that the women combined their leverage was she and Dolly Madison went on a letter writing campaign to smear John Randolph in order to save Martha's sister-in-law, because John Randolph was trying to get her husband to set her aside. And by basically writing to every woman they knew that was married to someone influential, they changed the entire course of that plot that John Randolph had to get her sister-in-law put aside. So that was a neat thing. I will say that it was very disturbing to see how Martha changed from viewing slavery as morally wrong to a necessary, almost altruistic evil, because at the end she still owned slaves. And I will say that Jefferson's inaction, even to free his own children by Sally Hemings, changed my view of him. Like, he actually wrote in his book that his oldest son was a runaway, even though he let him go, knowing that like later on someone else could go after his son. Yeah, I'm not a Jefferson fan now at all. And the other book that I read also was about women in history, and that is Lady Clementine by Marie Benedict. I don't know if you've read any of her books, but she frequently writes about women that have been overlooked in history. And I will say that her writing style was not quite as riveting as the first one that I book talked, but this one was very interesting to me because you hear so much about Winston Churchill, but you really don't hear much about his wife, Clementine Hosier Churchill. And there again, watching how this is, again, another meticulously researched novel. She talks about how she researches it at the end, and how she leveraged what power she did have to basically change history. Like, I do not think Winston Churchill would have been the man he was had she not been cleaning up his messes and influencing his views throughout his career. It really was interesting to see how she impacted Eleanor Roosevelt, and how the roles of women changed in the United States because of what Clementine Churchill had done in Britain. And obviously it was because of the war that they were able to do everything from participate in the armed forces to moving into other positions of power, lower positions of power. But that was very interesting because that was in both books. But the conversations, which are obviously fictional because they really don't know what Eleanor and Clementine talked about, but I liked how they thought that might have gone, because they talked about the difficulty of being married to powerful men and then also having to raise children. And it's mothering in that class during that time period was much different than how we view it. I would have given her a mom fail. But you know, that, I guess that's just how it was. And I liked that that they had Eleanor and Clementine talk about the guilt that they felt for not being able to do it all, basically. Let's see. The one thing that was different about the book with Clementine is it actually addresses the mental health issue. And I thought it was very interesting how Clementine spent some time at Dr. Stanley Leaf's health retreat at Champneys. And that is where she learned that the stress and strain of living under, oh, and Kimberly Bell is here, so I will finish that later. Not meet for our regular meeting until July 12th. And that's becoming Mrs. Lewis, if you didn't get the word on that. All right, everybody, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining us. Bye.